Yes, so you have to click got it. So we got it. Good. As Sonia said, but as you also know from your experience, we live in 18 months of disruption through COVID crisis and possibly other things as well, not only COVID, but so it's a major disruption to youth work related training, to the Erasmus Plus program, Solidarity Core. So yeah, we are trying to cope, we are trying to deal with situation. If you look at Ray research, they would say there is some resilience in the field, but still, I think probably the old ways are disrupted and maybe the new ways haven't taken form fully yet. So the beginning of this webinar, we would like to see actually how are you, and basically how are you dealing with this disruption, to start really from there, recognizing on a very emotional level, actually, how you're dealing with this disruption. And at the same time, we also believe that disruption itself, it's a good opportunity for learning. So one question for you would be, how are you dealing? How are you handling disruption? And second question is, what are you learning these 18 months as a youth worker, as a youth work trainer, as a field of youth workers? So these are two questions that we have for you in the beginning. Domago will share with you now the mirror board that we have prepared to capture these reflections, because in a second we will split you in small groups exactly to share these two questions. How are you dealing with disruption? How are you handling, and what are you learning? And in order to do that, if you open the mirror board, you will have two things there.
Oh, hopefully, oh, sorry, something is wrong with my computer, it doesn't work. Yeah, so just to let you know, yeah, that I don't know if you have used Miro before as a tool. So if you open the board, please do try to open it now, because when you go to breakout rooms, you will not be able to see it. So I will share my screen just to show you a bit how does it look like. So hopefully you now see my screen. And what Darko said, this is the first question on the left side. We ask you just to mark down how are you feeling today, and you can use here you see the pen, so if you click P or click on it, you can choose the pen and then do whatever, or maybe if you want, you can use the shape and then click the shape and create the shape as such. On the second part, here on the left, on the right, sorry, we ask you to put a sticky note. So how does this work? You click on a sticky note, choose the color. I'm feeling pink today, and then I can put it and write the text inside. Yeah. Sorry, Darko, just a bit of a technical thing.
No worries. Maybe just a few words about the four quadrants.
Yes.
If you find yourself, so there are four rooms, so four quadrants of change. So actually you can find yourself either in contentment, being happy how things are. You might find still, maybe you're looking at yourself and honestly checking with yourself, are you still in denial, saying, yes, I would like everything to return as it was. I don't like this COVID crisis to be here. Or perhaps maybe in the moment of confusion, thinking, okay, perhaps maybe it's time to let go of some old stuff and maybe create some new. So this is this moment of confusion, uncertainty, or perhaps maybe already in a renewal, saying, okay, yes, I really learned a lot from this situation and I found my new ways of dealing it, and maybe back to containment. So that would be the role, the task in your little groups, to check where are you in these four rooms at the moment, and what are you learning. For that, I'm just checking the time. We will give you exactly 17 minutes in your little group. So 70 minutes for two questions. Please leave the outcomes on the mirror board.
The rooms are being opened right now, and see you and good luck. Hello, welcome back. I think that everyone is back now. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. It was exciting to see the mirror board moving, and also in the rooms, how people are finding their place. If you can share the screen, Domago. So it's very interesting, the arrows, and probably it's not just one dot and one point in time. Probably it was lots of shifting in these 18 months and moving from different rooms and maybe moving back and moving forward and maybe spiraling in the middle. So it was very, very exciting. Hope it was possible to find your place, at least at this point of time. When it comes to learning, I was looking at the post-its coming in, and they're still coming in. So maybe they're not totally complete picture, but some things that are appearing a lot is the word new. Probably if you would do a word cloud out of your post-its, probably word new would be one of the biggest, and probably the word digital probably will be the second, and possibly somewhere else must be with the word change or changes. So it looks like when we're looking at what the field is learning and what are you learning personally, that it looks, there's a lot about new concepts, new approaches, new competencies, new methods, new tools, lots of new stuff. There's a whole area in the field of digital, exactly where we are in this particular moment, in this webinar. So digital environment, how to deal with it, how to work with it, how to create a distance, how to create closeness, how to kind of embrace it or not embrace it. So finding a way with the digital, it feels a lot. There is a lot of learning on attitudes level, lots of learning around flexibility, about driving change, possibly a lot of learning about acceptance, and probably many, many more. So we would like to give you a couple of moments, maybe also to reflect, and to, when you look at this board or two boards, what do you see? Not only personally, but what do you see as representatives of youth work fields? So what the field is learning now in this 18 months, how the mindsets are shifting. Are they shifting? Maybe you can raise your digital hand if you have any thoughts about that. So what do you see? How are the mindsets shifting in these 18 months? Yes, Ira.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Oh, well, the first picture, I just like watching at all this big screen to me right now. It says two things, the new and we're learning, but I think majority of us, it's standing between confusion and renewal. And I like that someone made this swirl in the middle of the 4 quadrants. So I believe we are all going into this spiral, going along the 4 phases. We are keen to learn, and we know we're learning new and exploring. That's great. But then we're also in all the phases at all time. Maybe this might be a bit personal also. We realize that we ourselves as youth workers and professionals in the field need more support into this aspect. Because I feel we were only trying to support our target groups and our youth and transfer everything, and we forgot ourselves on the way, or the opportunities were minimal. So we are spiraling into this, being happy today for it tomorrow, confusion, devastation. Next day, woo, it's great. Well, that's what the picture tells me at the moment.
Thanks a lot, Ira. So youth workers need support too, not only requesting from them to support young people in this crisis. Thanks. Is it Andre? Are you just supporting Ira, or you want to add something?
No, I'm supporting her. This was thumb up, not a raising hand.
Okay, good. So it resonates what Ira said. Any other thoughts about what's the state in the field that you can sense? Maybe beyond, yes, yourself. Ariana.
Hi, guys. I've seen that in my sector, looking at what my colleagues are doing, I'm feeling that there is a bit of confusion about what to do, because most of us from my area are not really good. They don't have a lot of expertise in digital youth work. And another part of my team, my colleagues, are really in denial because they don't want really to learn how to approach, how to connect with young people on a digital level. So it has been really a mixed feelings, and also still people are confused where I live, where I work, because they still don't, they want to make that jump and start to connect and interact digitally with young people, because probably they're frightened about how they will be able to grow in expertise, digital services and digital opportunities. And it's a really big problem, because I can feel that there is a denial, not from the external area, not from the young people, but from the youth worker, which is a actually.
That's very interesting what you're saying. Yes, probably digital is not the only solution. That's also we should be aware of. But it's interesting, this reflection that you had. Probably youth workers are more in denial than young people. It's an interesting point. Thanks a lot. And also maybe linked to that, maybe we can really dig deeper into question of mindsets. So how ready are we to let go of maybe of some beliefs that are not serving us anymore, or maybe ways of working that we used to be so happy with before, perhaps. What's difficult to let go of in this situation, in these 18 months? Aish?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. It demands also some kind of inner searching, and I think for me what is hard to let go is this feeling that maybe through digital the quality of human connection is not as I would feel it in the other face-to-face settings in youth work or training in non-formal educational settings. But with that said, I think there is something from the picture also that you shared about these uncertainties and kind of frustration with uncertainties that maybe also looking inwards for me it kind of opens opportunities to see if some things we should do differently, or if they should be tried in different way, or even approached from different angle, or just trying something different even when frustrated. I mean, I'm trying to put those two things together, because I think on the one extreme is we are getting stuck because we are frustrated and we are uncertain how to progress, but then on the other extreme, let's say we could swim in that and just try something different, and this could be small things, and this is what helps me in a way.
That's interesting. New mindset arising. It also links a little bit to discussions we had in the team when we're preparing the event, or deciding shall we postpone or not postpone the event. And one of the questions that came into these discussions, it was, is innovation a matter of survival? Yeah, or is innovation a matter of resilience in the field? Can you actually not innovate in these times? Maybe another big question to you.
Are we a dinosaurs? Huh?
Yes. Can you not innovate? Can we not innovate? Yes, Mohammed.
I think from my perspective, innovation is why humans innovate in the first place.
Lost you for a moment.
I'm very sorry, but we have
Call for prayer.
The prayer, yes, the prayer.
If you can speak a little bit louder than the call for prayer, if it's respectful, I don't know.
Yes, I can talk after 5 minutes, please.
Interesting. Maybe Mohammed, while you find a different place where you can hear you, maybe somebody else can jump into these questions. So what are we forced to innovate in a way in these times of disruption?
Yes. Yes. First of all, we innovate, or human innovate. The caveman innovated because survive. We have to innovate to survive. Innovation is a part of the human biology or human mindset. We innovate to survive. So we have to innovate now to survive. This is the pandemic.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much.
Thank you. Katerina, what's your thinking?
Well, I think that it's inevitable that we have to innovate, because if we don't, we will just be left behind in a way. So even though the only thing that I can think as an alternative is doing things online, that's probably not the only way. But the question that I have for myself that I still don't have an answer to is what are exactly the elements of the offline work that create magic, and how can we recreate it in a different way? So there are probably some elements that I'm still not aware of, but I'm searching for them, that can help us create things even without, I don't know, 20 people in the same room. So I don't know, I'm thinking about that.
Thanks a lot. And hopefully this webinar today will give some answers to that. It feels like going beyond this polarity or duality in terms of thinking either or, offline versus digital. So how to have magic even in a digital, even online spaces, how to integrate these two, possibly some of the avenues to explore in this world. Any other thoughts on that? Yes, if not, I will keep this thinking that Aisha was saying, trying to do something different, even if we are frustrated. It resonates almost like a slogan to be written as Karsten has one, everybody can access to education. So maybe we should spray that on our walls here. And as I said before, in the beginning, we also, the Academy itself, actually, even before, had always the role to look at the field and see what are the new trends in the field, what's innovative in the field. And possibly amongst you, there are people who have been selected to present their practice, to present their work. And we are looking forward to see that in the event in June. Nevertheless, there was a research following what is exactly innovation in youth work. And I pass floor back to Anita to lead us there. And maybe we get some more conceptual understanding about this question.
Absolutely. We've been talking a little bit. I will just be the one that reminds you that you have a body under your brain. So remember just to move it or stretch it, or adjust yourself and adjust your back. And it's very important that we don't get our health kind of injured by being online all the time. So take care of your own comfort right now. And you can do that while you hear the next part, because you were talking about innovation now at the end of our conversation. And that's exactly what we want to focus on. So there was a research run by the Academy about what is innovation? What does it mean to innovate in the field of youth work? And we find this a very crucial research for all of us, I would say. What does it mean to my practice? What does it mean in my context, in my territory where I work with my community? But we looked at it as a field. And for this, we're going to have a small presentation about what conclusions, or the first conclusions, let's say, a few of the conclusions of this study by Federica and Dragan that are here with us today to tell us a bit more about this. So Fede and Dragan, welcome.
Thank you very much. With my colleague Dragan and Michelangelo Belletti, that is not here during this seminar this morning. As you said, we started to do this research that now we came to the end. And a little bit the exercise that we are going to do today will be to introduce not the full research, but a little bit the first part of it. No, so couple of information about this research that for us is very important to share with you, and then there will be also a part in which you can also ask more questions. First of all, the idea of the research was not to map in general innovation, and this is very important, but really to focusing on innovation in youth work. And this is where the first part of the research was going, so in a kind of desk research of the existing finding and conclusion, coming from other studies, research, publication, and articles in the field of youth and related fields, mean more in education. We try to mainstream on this, and we discovered also that there were not so much bibliography about innovation and youth work. That was very interesting for us. And then the second part was more an active part. We ran 34, we done more than 5 focus groups with 34 youth workers, practitioners and relevant actors about their experience and understanding and practice of innovation in youth work. And many things that you were mentioning now, they came through this discussion. I think that for me and Dragan, that we were leading this focus group, were very, very, very interesting moment of learning, because we come from the field too. We are not just working in research, we are also working within youth projects. And so we recognize a lot of the discussion that we had. A lot of discussion that came through these focus groups were really exactly about what you say. No, we innovate for what? You said no need of surviving, not left behind. There was a lot of discussion about innovation and purposes that we're going to discuss also today with you, and also to provide an answer. We did this focus group. Is very important to contextualize more than 8 months ago, something like this. So in a moment in which still we were living in the pandemic and with a lot of constraints. So of course, this need to provide an answer was very, very high. Of course, the research was about innovation and youth work, not only and not focusing on the COVID period, but of course, this is very important. We were living that moment too. And the third part was a survey with more than 70 youth worker practitioners, and that answer that in a way was building let's say context, and also to give more findings about the focus group. And then we draft our consolidation and drafting conclusion, more also to putting everything in perspective. One of the most interesting part and the challenging part, and for some of you that was also part on the focus group on other consultative projects, was in a way to define what is innovation is in youth work. So for us, this was very important. We didn't want to bring a kind of definition and to put there and to say, no. We wanted really from all this process, step by step, try to find a definition that was meaningful for the people that we're speaking to. So maybe it's not meaningful for everybody, but at least we found something that was meaningful for the people that were part of this consultation process. First of all, innovation in youth work within the study, again, the context is very, very important. For us, we understand and demonstrate methodologies, practice and tools, way of approaching target groups, organizational model that have novel elements that are upgrade of existing practice or are completely new to the youth field or to this particular context. And this, we are coming back now also with Dragan, it's very important, this kind of element that we need in bold, because this had an impact on what then, also in the next webinars, we are going to present you more part of this research. We went as constraints, triggers, and elements that are support the innovation. And another very important thing is that innovation should enable youth work to better address the needs of young people, positive impact on their life, or to contribute to a wider social change. Again, there was a big discussion during the focus groups about that innovation sometimes is innovation for innovation, or because it's a trendy, or because somebody is asking to us. But in this definition, we agreed upon the fact that this innovation should have a purpose, but not a general one, but should have as a purpose the fact to enable young youth work to better address the need of young people. This is for us was very important. And I'm passing the floor to Dragan.
Thank you very much, Federica. So now that you've heard the definition of youth work, we want to point out to some elements that we thought or we found through the research are crucial and defining for innovation and youth work. And you'll see some of them are actually extracted from the definition that we came up together with the representatives from the youth field sector, but others are just additional elements that we found are actually very, very unique and that distinguish innovation in the youth field from innovation in other fields. The first one that you see is the variety of types of this basically different scopes of innovation that we can find. And as you can see, we've mentioned the methodologies, novel methodologies, but then also practices, tools, and then going wider into different ways of approaching the target groups or even different organizational models. And you've mentioned some of this already in the stickers in the Miro board. So I saw their methodologies, approaches, different practices. We wanted to, and we had to expand from the very narrow view of innovation just in the sense of a new tool or a new activity. And then when we talk about innovation youth work, it can also refer to an overall approach or an overall way of working with young people. So that's one thing about the different scope. Another thing is that innovation, and actually Federica mentioned this briefly when talking about the definition, that innovation does not have to mean that it should be something completely new, completely original everywhere in the world. It's very context specific, meaning it depends on the particular context in which it exists. And this can mean that innovation can be something taken from a different field and then adjusted to the youth work sector, upgraded, and it could be also something that is new only in a particular geographical reality or only in a particular community, and it can come from a different sector. So this cross-sectoral perspective of innovation is also important, even though we also saw through the research that there is not so much interaction between the different sectors, and more on that will come in the next webinars. But basically, just that innovation can be a practice that is taken from a different field. And then the third point here on this slide that you see is that the distinguishment that we are making between creativity and innovation. So very often we see in literature or just in the public opinion that having a new idea is innovation. Well, it cannot really be considered because there is this difference between innovation and creativity. Having a new idea can be a trigger to innovate, to create something new. But then when you have actually a concrete actual output, this is where we can talk about innovation. So there should be a result of this creative process. We can move on to the next slide where we have few other elements. And one of them is about this organizational framework as support of innovation. So innovation does not happen without a context. It's part of something that we call in our research ecosystem, innovation ecosystem, and you'll hear more about this again in the next webinars. But basically the idea is that it happens in a certain framework. And in the youth field sector, we found the youth organization or the other organization working with young people as the context, as the framework. So we talk very often in the research about the need for the organization to support innovative practices. So to provide enough space, enough time, to provide safety net for the youth workers to be able to innovate. So it's important to keep this in mind, that innovation does happen in a certain frame. The other element that we have here is about the replication potential. So innovation, for it to be considered as innovation, it should either have shown a concrete replication, so it should have shown certain impact, on young people or in the field, or it should at least have the potential to have some kind of replication potential for the others, so that it can be taken by others, it can be adapted to a different context or a different setting and then replicated. And we have one more slide with few other elements, and this is actually what is really distinguishing innovation in the youth work field from innovation in other fields. It is about creating value. So innovation in youth work should not be only about creation of novelty. So that's far from enough. And having the element of new novelty and originality, it's not enough for something to be considered as innovative, because the value aspect should be part of it. And this has two components, this value component of innovation. So on the one hand, it should be value-based, which means it needs to encompass the basic values of youth work. So when you're creating something new, it should be based on what we consider youth work, the basic values of our work and our approach of working with young people. The other aspect is about creating value. So it should have some kind of impact either on the young people themselves. So it should empower them. It should. We talked a lot about there was this huge discussion in the focus groups whether the definition should say that innovation and youth work impacts the lives of young people positively, but then the conclusion was that this is probably too strong to always say that we are impacting life, but it should empower young people to be able to make this kind of positive impacts on their own by themselves. And then either that or to create some kind of social change, which means to tackle some social issues, to tackle some problems, to provide new answers to existing issues, to existing problems, etc. So there are these two components, in which one, it should be really value-based. So it's not only about just the fact that you're creating something new, but then it should have some kind of impact on the people that we are working with and on the community. And then something else that is not actually part of this presentation, but we should mention as one of the key elements of innovation youth work is the participation of young people as an active agency in the process. So we also found that innovation in youth work is different from other fields, because young people have this double role of recipients, beneficiaries of innovation, but then also active stakeholders in the process. So they are an active agency, and very often they are the drivers of innovation together with the young people. So these are some basic elements that we found were important for the process of innovation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dragan and Federica, for the presentation. This study will be released soon as well, and you will get news about it. But we already have here 2 questions or comments in the chat, and I will now also open for anyone who wants to raise their hand and share their view, opinion, or their question to the researchers or to the group. Well, I'll start with the first question on the chat already from Mariana, and she's saying, what if in the organization you're a part of, the leadership team doesn't allow space for innovation? And I think this is something many of us maybe can relate to, unfortunately. I don't know if this came up in the focus groups, Dragan, Federica, the leadership and innovation, how to lead innovation and how this affects innovation. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is exactly, we seem that we do that, like the spoiler for the next movie coming. So there will be a next webinars and there will be work about triggers and condition. But this was one of the interesting things that we found out, the role of the organization and the role of the kind of organization and the power in organization. And I think this was very interesting because we realized that there were different settings in the organization, more hierarchical, for example, in which they could support or not the innovation, or more horizontal organization in which they were provided more spaces for innovation. And about leadership and innovation, another interesting reflection was about which kind of competencies are needed within an organization to develop innovation. Because this is what also Dragan was mentioning in the focus on part, in which creativity doesn't mean innovation per se. We could have leadership that are super creative, but they're not able, for example, for pushing to innovation, putting this in a structure. So sometimes leadership, when I was leading this mention, we could understood in leadership that are preventing any kind of creative movements, but also leadership that are not able to transform creative movement in innovative movements. So I think, and another thing about leadership that sometimes we saw in our focus group, that leadership sometimes were preventive creativity and innovation because they were not seeing the benefit of it. Sometimes innovation that because of the structure and sometimes also cause of the structure of the grants are not seen as something that bring immediate benefit to the organization. And sometimes, leadership needs to understand which is the final outcome of benefit. So I think it's also a question that to create this culture among these two elements.
Thank you, Federica. Thank you. There is another comment here by Asha saying, love it. It needs to be spelled out that innovation should create value while being value-based. So the double meaning of value here, and should contribute hopefully positively to social change. So this underlining this last aspect that Dragan was saying. I don't know, Asha, if you want to add anything to your comment here. No, it's all good. Very good. We also have a comment from Irene who's saying, how do you make sure the methodology for innovation matches the needs and conditions or possibilities of the target group? So how can we make sure that whatever innovation we're bringing matches the possibilities, the needs, the conditions in the field? Federica, Dragan, any thoughts on this?
I think this goes back to the question of process versus product and the importance of the process of innovation, which is, I think, also different when we're talking about innovation and youth work. Honestly, we haven't really gone into this part of methodology or what is innovation methodology or the process of innovation. But what we can say already is that innovation, again, is context specific, which means also the process of innovation depends on the particular context in which you are working. And this requires adaptations to the needs and the conditions and the possibilities, interests of the target group, especially keeping in mind that they should also be actively involved in the process. It would be interesting to go more in depth into this question. We had, as part of the survey, we have distinguished between different types of organizations. So organizations that work in rural versus urban communities. So organizations that are more hierarchical in their organization or more combined or more horizontal in terms of their structure. And we found some differences, especially, for example, the links with the community, the links with different stakeholders, which are much more apparent in more horizontal or in organizations that are in rural communities. So I think it's too far-fetched now to make any kind of conclusions in this direction based on the data that we have, but we found some differences in how, and we can say that surely, for sure, that we found differences in which how innovation is approached in rural small communities versus big capital cities, and in different types of structures of organization. So I think hopefully in the future, we or somebody else could explore this in more depth, because I think it's very important.
Definitely. So to look more into what are the processes that lead to innovation in typical, well, I'm not sure if you can say typical organizations of youth work. I'm not sure that exists, a typical organization in youth work. I'm going to read a comment from Otiana and then give the word for somebody who just raised the hand, but I think you put your hand down now. So I'm not sure if that was a mistake or if you really want to, that guy is there. But let me just read the comment of Otiana for a minute. Amusing work, that is very important that innovation is sustainable and usable after the crisis. So looking here more at innovation that spurs from a crisis, like the moment we lived just now, 2020-21, but how to sustain innovation, which is also a very good thought question for all of us, how to sustain mainstream innovation in youth work. Daka, I don't know anymore because the name dropped.
Yeah, it's strange. It's like TZ or just
very good.
Yeah. Really briefly, just inspired by Ira's comment and Dragan's answer to it. I think it's worth mentioning that innovation is a process. I know we all have like how to say multiple reactions on that word, but it's a rather process than a moment of illumination when you have some insight about something ingenious. So coming back to the question about how do we know that matches the needs of the XYZ, first of all, young people, and then all other stakeholders, it's a process. So it's a piloting. It's a lot about it's about a learning through practice. It's a lot about measuring the change we are making by innovating something new. So I think for me, innovation as a process is equally important to be mentioned as one of the principles, like in the same line with those value-based and contributing social change. Otherwise, we will have some kind of magical expectations from the innovators to change something with just like the magical stick. So that's without the need to elaborate more. That's just the proposal for the team, researchers team, if it's possible now to introduce that extra perspective, because I think that's pretty much very useful for the practitioners to be aware of their own role, of their own effort that is needed to be implemented in any process of innovation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Data. Thank you. I don't know if Dragan or Federica wants to react to this idea that innovation is not a magical moment, it is a process.
Yes, I think that this is something that we also brought quite clear in the research, and something that we are going then to present in the next coming edition, coming webinar, with the idea of the ecosystem, which all the actors in this ecosystem and that we try to draw are more or less of the same dimension, because youth work is one of these elements in this ecosystem, and each of these elements should have, or they have, their own responsibility to bring innovation. And this, if I just can link, Anita, with the comment of Maria, that innovation without criticizing the system that produces crisis, that is adaptation, and the creativity is not for a change, but to confirm what we define normality, that is the problem. I think that in this idea of the ecosystem, it's exactly this, that innovation comes from a need. A need comes because the system doesn't reply to the needs. And in a way, if you go through an innovation process that really reply to the need of the young people, in a way you had a critical thinking to this system. And I think this is the main difference that we found in analyzing innovation for innovation. So innovation because I need to apply for a grant, I want to do something different, or innovation for make a social change. Innovation for make a social change is sometimes a small thing. It's not a big project in a side, it's a small thing that really try to make a difference in my local context with my young people as a youth worker. So I think it's also this way that we try to draw the difference also in understanding innovation as something super big that should be bling bling, that every with fireworks, or something that is really make innovative processes within my local community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Federica. Also to value this kind of incremental innovation. So the ones that add little details that can make a difference instead of being always disruptive, always having to be completely different from everything else. Thank you. And Irina?
Thank you. What I just wanted to add, I was reflecting on it. Let's not forget, I think it's very important to highlight the fact that our innovation in this process came ad hoc. We were not prepared for it. We didn't lead a process to do it. It did not start like we start any other process in the learning field. It came from the need. So here it came from the need of us as youth workers and practitioners to innovate our innovative fields into youth work because we were faced with a pandemic. So maybe that clashes a bit also with what we were used to call innovation in our field and how we were used to do it. We would do it systematically. We would meet, we would plan, we would do everything around it. And then all of a sudden, we're there and we need to innovate today for tomorrow, in the brackets, you know? So this, I think, brought quite a lot into creating us the resilience attitude towards it, the resistance itself. But on the other side, as any bigger change in the world that comes with a lot of stress, anxiety, and everything, I still believe it put us out of the comfort zone and obliged us to really think of what the needs are in every other aspect. Mea culpa here, but also for the sector maybe. I feel we were a bit getting old into our own ways and methods. Sorry for being so blunt. As I said, it's mea culpa, but who feels it resonates, it's fine. Maybe at some point we really needed this big push. I mean, we needed a kick out to go with. Was it great? Was it nice for everybody? No. Is it still frustrating me? Oh yes, it does. Am I still excited every morning when I need to produce something new and then devastated after a couple of hours? Yeah, absolutely. But I think it really did, and I see the big potential of it too. So now I believe also the findings through the research that the guys introduced, I think they're very interesting. And I think we need to now shift our own work and mindset into preparing our own process for innovating and making it a process. Not necessarily, it did go in structured processes so far. So we could fail. We failed with it as well. I don't know you, but I had cases when I thought I planned something really nice and everything, and I failed with it. And then I realized it's fine. You can fail digitally as well, rather than fail in a working room with 30 participants.
Thank you, Irena. I think that's very interesting, that vision that actually crisis or limitations push our creativity, push our brain to find new ways, but maybe we didn't have necessarily the time for the process that Daza was speaking about, the process of piloting, testing, checking out if actually this is sustainable. So I think that's a very nice insight. Federica, I don't know if you want to add something?
Yeah, I think that one thing that we found very interesting while we were working on the focus group and also from some study cases, we try also to analyze exactly this. So innovation that came from an external push, so a crisis, something like this, or an innovation that came, for example, from young people, from the internal needs of the organization. So we collected different kind of examples and tried to map which were the condition and the trigger that support a different kind of innovation. Because exactly again, innovation is not once forever, no? For example, what for us was very important in this research was not to get in the trap to end with a model. We didn't want to have a model. So if you do this and this and this, then you will innovate. No, we wanted to put clearly what Ira was saying now, elements that could lead to innovate. But for example, we had also an interesting study case in which we say, okay, we were pushed so much from an external situation that we were felt in a need of innovate, and we felt because we were not ready. And we tried to analyze where they were not ready, because they were super professional. So we tried to sort it out, this kind of competency that could be possible, which are the triggers and the condition of this. So I think this thing of being pushed or not and how much we are able to react is a super interesting topic that open up for further also reflection, because I have to say that in the research you will find a kind of frame. So we also at a certain moment we need us with Sonia to agree, okay, we stop. We cannot go and investigate more of these things. But yeah, these things of example are there, how much we can innovate when we are under pressure, which are the triggers and the conditions that really can allow us to do it.
Thank you. I think we're all getting very curious about the rest of the study. So mission accomplished. That's what we wanted as well. And I hope that when it comes out that you find it useful and meaningful, also maybe to spark the debate in your organizations about these topics. I'm going to close this little debriefing now with the final comment here from Asha saying, are we innovating today for what we need already yesterday, what we needed yesterday? And that became very clear right now. So this is a good provocation. Were we up to date? Were we ready to innovate before? Are we still? So I think this shows that we are aware of our limitations and maybe willing to learn, I hope. And the next part actually of our webinar, the final part of our webinar is about that. It's about learning from practices from each other. And I'll give the floor to Darko for that.
Yes, thanks a lot, Anita. I was holding my breath back, not trying to jump into this discussion because it really sparked a lot of good questions. And for me, one of the questions that stays still in the air, there is possibly much easier to innovate when you're part of a larger field movement rather than purely on willpower. But we can leave it for next webinars when Federica, Dragan, and Michelangelo will share a bit deeper the results of the research. Yes, as Anita said, the Academy itself, in case you've been in the Academy #1 Academy event in Kranjska Gora, you remember, or even if you haven't been there, the core of the Academy is really to learn from practices and processes happening in the field. And one of the cornerstones of the Academy is really to select so-called contributions or basically practices that are innovative in the field and that have processes behind that we can learn all from. So in June next year, there will be lots of presentations and lots of learning from these practices, but we also decided to keep some of them in the webinars. So it's actually my big pleasure to invite Peter Mitchell. He's coming from Berlin, from an organization that actually has very interesting title for this context. It's called Learning Laboratory or Learning Lab. I guess in German sounds a bit different. And he was very good choice for this first webinar about learning and innovating in disruption, because it feels that in their projects, they try to reconcile this online versus offline work and go more hybrid on finding their ways to find maybe magic that was requested already. So Peter, some time to share your insights from your work and what led you to this kind of practice. You may share with us now.
Thank you, Darko, for your warm introduction, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. I'm just checking I've got permission to do this from the host.
Yes, you have it.
I have. Fantastic. Okay, then I will share my screen. Okay, so just to start off, I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Peter Mitchell, and I am co-founder and executive director of Lernabar. We are a Berlin-based social business with charitable status, and we are a relatively new organization. We only founded in summer last year, but we are already implementing a quite diverse array of activities at the local level and also the international level, ranging from outdoor education projects to art and cultural projects, and also, well, rather a surprising development from my perspective, hybrid projects, which we started to experiment with last year. So I'm going to, for the purpose of this webinar, I'm going to talk about a project that we implemented last December called Apart Berlin Poltava. Just give me a second to go to the next screen. Yeah, okay. So this was a project that we did in cooperation with our partners in Ukraine, NGO Logos. And it was funded by the foundation Stiftung EVZ, which in English is Remembrance, Responsibility, Future. They mostly promote work on historical memory educational projects, but they also fund projects with Eastern Partnership countries. And in the context of the pandemic last summer, they put out a call for like innovative projects to try and foster dialogue and exchange in the context of the COVID pandemic. So we applied and fortunately received quite a small grant, actually, only 13,000 euros. And our goal was to foster meaningful collaboration between young and emerging artists in Ukraine and in Germany. And we did this through basically organizing a hybrid project that was it culminated in a live dual event, which I will talk about later in this presentation. What we did, so first we put out a call for young artists, and when we got the application in, we selected 7 artists on each side in Germany and Ukraine, and we paired them in tandems. So, and we paired them also in interdisciplinary tandems. So for example, a sound artist in Ukraine with a visual artist in Germany, or a dancer in Germany with an installation artist in Ukraine, whatever, but they had to be interdisciplinary. And we asked them to start collaborating online. We also mentored them and gave them basically the broad topic to think about their futures, so their visions, hopes, and fears for the future. And basically the instructions was that they had to do something that was presentable in 15 or 20 minutes, live and also together. So in total, we had 7 live performances, again happening in 2 places at the one time. And I will just show you the website that we made to give an impression of what we did, and also talk about 2 of the projects that are 2 of my favorite. They're quite contrasting projects, both in terms of their take on futures and also in terms of the kind of, let's say, difficulty of the technological means that we had to use. So can you see on the screen the website that I've flagged up?
Unfortunately not.
Okay,
it's on the white screen. I think that if you want to share the website, you need to stop sharing and then share the separate window of the website.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Okay, it's working now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is a website we created about the project. This is just a little blurb about it, separated by a distance of 1,600 kilometers, but interacting in real time. 17 young and emerging artists performed together and stretched the framework of our conceptual imagination. All the projects here, I would invite you to, if you're interested, to look at the website later. It's www.apartberlinpoltava.net. I'll post it in the chat. And all the projects here are collected on the website. And each project has got a description about the project itself, also about how we did it technologically, and also a feature-length video. So this first project that I present, called The Tree of Life, West Africa meets Ukraine in a fusion of folk art, traditional music, and dance, was, in terms of features, it was one of the most positive, and it was also technologically quite simple to do. So what we did is we had an artist in Ukraine, Roxolana Dudka, who creates very beautiful folk art paintings, and she drew a picture called The Tree of Life, and she recorded basically the drawing and over time lapse, and sent this to a band that we're actually working in the framework of a European Solidarity Corps Solidarity project called the Heartbeats of Africa. And I showed the guys this picture, and they really identified with the visual imagery of it, and they selected a song from their repertoire that they thought best fit to this picture. And technologically, it was quite simple. What happened in the live studio in Berlin, we screened a playback video of this time-lapse video that Roxolana took, and the band played in front of it. And then in the post-production, then we kind of jazzed it up a bit, and I'll just basically show you a very small excerpt from the video to give you an idea of what happened. So basically we had live performance of a West African band, Heartbeats of Africa, with the dancer Musa Bakayoko, with the time lapse of Roxana Dudka that we then integrated into post-production. And then if I scroll forward, for example, okay, so that's just a very quick example. The video is 16 minutes long, but it's a very quick example of one of the more, let's see, simpler projects we did. And then I'll show you a very contrasting project, Dark Planet, a cooperation between the Berlin-based DJ Stacey O and the Ukrainian-based VR artist Vartan Markarian. Dark Planet transports us into a post-apocalyptic future or parallel world that stands in opposition to nature and humankind. And not only does this project contrast in terms of its optimism or lack of optimism, it was also technologically one of the most, and conceptually I think one of the most interesting projects, because what happened here is the Ukrainian-based artist prepared a VR world. He created a VR world. And this was played back in Berlin for the first half of the performance. But then during the performance, using a virtual reality headset, the Ukrainian artist actually stepped into this VR world and started to paint and recreate the VR world. So I will just show you again quickly how this happened. So the performance opens in Berlin. And we have in the background this VR world created by Vartan. And then at this point, it flashes to Poltava. And in Berlin, we also see live what he's creating in real time in this VR headset. We're getting the input signal from Poltava, from his headset live. And he starts to paint this new world. Basically, he burns down the planet and then starts to regenerate life in the virtual reality world. Okay, so as I said, each video is like about 15-20 minutes long. They're all quite unique and very interesting. So if you have time, do have a look at them. I will just go back to the. I'd like to show you more, but because of time limitations, I just wanted to give you this this flavor. Now I will try to go back to I'll try to go back to the presentation. Give me 1 second. Yes. Okay. So yeah, that was just as I say a little flavor of what we did, and why we did it. Firstly, the motivation that we had for doing this project came from both our needs as organizers, and also the needs of the young artists that we were working with in Germany and Ukraine. So from the perspective of organizers, we live for and also from fostering exchange between young people from different cultures and backgrounds and countries. And last year, this was very challenging. It was really difficult to do. And also the artists that we were in communication with, they live to perform and to show their work. And again, this was pretty much impossible to do last year. They were pretty much banned from performing, especially in front of an audience. And some of them experimented with online and streaming, and this was maybe interesting the first couple of times they did it, but very quickly it got boring and it wasn't fresh anymore. So we were talking with artists, and the real need, they wanted to perform. It didn't matter, it didn't need to be to a large audience, but just to some people and have a feeling of immediacy that they're actually connecting with an audience. And they also, especially in the context of the pandemic, they needed good material for their portfolios. So we thought, okay, we will try and do something that satisfies these needs. We will give some sort of live performance, so an offline experience. What we didn't want to do was an online project. We were sure that we really didn't want to do this. We wanted to do something that had an offline element. It was very important for us as organizers and also for the participants that we were working with. Yeah, just basically connecting with this theme that we've been talking about, the innovation in times of disruption. We would have never come up with this idea previously. We would have invited the Ukrainian artists to Germany, we would have done something together, we would have gone to Ukraine or whatever. But we thought, okay, how can we connect them? So we started to think, okay, let's use the technology at hand to try something fresh and try something new. And I should mention that when we came up with this concept, myself and our art director, we didn't know how to do this in practice. Technologically, we didn't know how it was possible. We just had a concept, but fortunately, our concept inspired not only the artists, but it also inspired the people we know in Berlin who could provide the technical solution. So just to kind of, you can maybe talk about it in more detail if there's a question and answer session, but just to give you a rough impression of what's going on. In both locations, there are multiple inputs. There is a static camera, there's a moving camera, there are multiple audio inputs, there's maybe a video being played back, there's maybe a video being modified live. And in each location, people need to see what's going on in the other location. We've tried to create a real feeling of connection between both locations, and I think we managed to do this through the dual performance. And in order to do this, we had, of course, a technical team. We had to create a technical concept in collaboration with our technical stakeholders, and we also had a team of streamers in both locations. And this was actually the key to making the project a success, to making it technically possible. We had streamers in Berlin, we had streamers in Poltava, and streaming, I don't know how many of you are familiar with cross streaming. Again, I don't want to get too much into the technical detail, but it was basically a Zoom call. We actually used Zoom for the streaming, but a Zoom call with multiple inputs, not just the one camera and one microphone, but multiple inputs. And the streamers basically decide which input's coming from where, and they're cutting the material live, and really creating this feeling of connectedness between the two places. What we learned from this project is, well, we learned a number of things. The first thing that we learned is if you want to do something like this, then you need a realistic budget, because the technical team is expensive. I mean, we're currently organizing a follow-up, which we'll talk about in a bit. But streamers, the current market rate for streamers in Berlin is 600 euros per day, and you need 2 of them. And you need the day for them to set up, so it's expensive. And then also the camera people, the sound technicians, and all this, it's expensive. So it's very important for doing a project like this, which we didn't have the first time, but we've got now, as a technical manager in addition to the project manager, and to get the technical manager on board at the very beginning while you're conceptualizing the project, because the technical manager will make sure that firstly you have a realistic budget. Also, the technical manager is a very important person for mentoring the participants, making sure that they also know what the technical possibilities are for them. And this was a big learning curve for us, as I say, because we didn't know. We felt that we could do it, but we didn't know exactly how we could do it when we came up with the idea last summer. What we also learned, which I think is really important and has implications beyond just what we're doing, but for other people in the sector, is that there are other sectors and professionals beyond the field of youth who are actually really interested in what we are doing and really want to get involved. And this is what we found with basically the whole technical team. So we cooperated with our stakeholders, where a recording studio in Berlin called Studio DB, the streamers, moving systems, various people that are often doing commercial photo shootings and so on, are also working in the entertainment industry. And they liked what we are doing. And these people are also quite idealistic themselves. So idealistic that they dropped their prices quite considerably to work with us. And we realized that this is a real pool of like an untapped, I would say, resource that we're planning to use in the future to basically provide more opportunities in our youth work. And most of the people that we're working with, the stakeholders, they weren't even aware that this sector existed. So they were amazed that we were providing these opportunities for young people to engage in a project, to participate for free. They thought this was absolutely fantastic, and they're really keen to work with us as well. And I'd imagine it's the same in a lot of other sectors. So it's given us a big motivation to kind of reach out and involve professionals from beyond the youth work sector. Let me just go back to the presentation. Yes, this is, sorry, I meant to show you this slide. I hope you can see it. This was just a slide showing kind of the technical setup. Here's one of the streamers basically setting up during the setup day, getting everything in order. But as you can see, it's quite a complicated system. We had something like 4 or 5 computers running simultaneously, and a lot of technical equipment. And we were really lucky to have cooperation partners that were not just competent, but also really inspired by what we were doing, and who wanted to get involved because they saw this as something conceptually new, and wanted to be part of it. I mean, this can happen the first time you do it, or maybe the second time, but you can't keep on being at the cutting edge of. I don't think, sometimes you need to kind of then establish yourself and then and do something which you have tried and tested. But at least in the early phases, like last year, we felt that we were doing something conceptually quite fresh. We didn't see anything similar to this going on around us. And this links to also the follow-ups. Well, firstly, in terms of the participants, a number of them have followed up this project with actually collaborations, follow-up collaborations with the other artists that are involved. So some of them have actually been this summer. Some of the German-based participants have been touring Ukraine and playing in some of the big venues in Kiev and Kharkiv and so on, and also using the material that we produced during this project for their portfolio, which is valuable for them. And in terms of us as an organization, we also wanted to follow this up, take the same concept, but kind of stretch it somewhat. And this idea of continuing to use new technologies, continuing to kind of test new concepts, but also at the same time retaining this offline element, this kind of sense of immediacy that you have with projects which are very special and different to the everyday life that we otherwise experience. So what we are doing now, and actually we're actually planning this at the moment, and the project will start next week, Monday the 15th of November. We are organizing a parallel residency between young artists in Germany and Georgia, and it's funded by the same funder, the Stiftung EVZ, or Foundation Remembers Responsibility Future. This time with a much bigger budget, a more appropriate budget. It's still not enough for the technical stuff, but it's much more comfortable this time. And what we're doing is we have 8 artists from Germany, 8 artists from Ukraine, from Georgia, sorry. And in Germany, we're in this castle in Brandenburg called the Schloss Schönow, with a production crew, with the cooking team, with the project management team will be maybe 14, 15 people. And for the whole duration, with the streamers also, and for the whole duration of the project, we are going to be connected with the Georgians, who are based in central Tbilisi in a place called Fabrika. It's a big contemporary art space. And we have arranged the artists into, instead of tandems this time, into ensembles. So 2 on the German side, cooperating with 2 on the Georgian side, again, interdisciplinary. And they're going to be basically exploring what they're going to present over the period of 5 days. And at the end, there will be 2 performance days where they do this, they present the work, perhaps live like last time, perhaps pre-recorded. But again, the idea is that we create this real idea of kind of connection between both places. And to get back to the kind of central point of this webinar, I see I would never have imagined even 18 months ago that I would be running hybrid arts project. I wouldn't have imagined it, but we are kind of compelled to innovate, I would say, just in order to fulfill our needs and to do what otherwise we would have wanted to have done, which is to basically foster this exchange and dialogue and connection between young people and provide people with opportunities that you don't have in your everyday life. So just to fulfill our basic remit under the context of the pandemic, we were compelled to innovate, whether we wanted to or not. And we saw it as an opportunity. We were also able to see it as an opportunity because of the staff and resources that we have and the connection that we have. So we're quite fortunate in this sense. And
Peter, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm going to be very blunt. Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm going to ask you to wrap it up when we can, so we can also give the space for questions.
I have one more sentence to say. Mm-hmm. I was actually on my finishing sentence halfway through it.
Good timing of mine.
Yes. So yeah, we felt compelled to innovate in order to fulfill basically our remit and our needs. And the result is that we feel we have created something conceptually new. And if you have any questions, you want to go into more detail about any of these aspects, I will be delighted to share or to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Peter. I mean, yes, thanks, Anita, for timekeeping as well. We will have a couple of minutes for maybe a few questions to Peter. And then I guess you have also Peter's contact, and maybe if you're coming in the event in June next year, there will be more space and more time to also to maybe check about this new project of Peter. Few questions maybe to Peter, comments. Yes, no? Irene.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing the project. I really like it. I was just curious to know if, apart from the artists connecting between each other, there is an audience, and what's the way of knowing that, since it's a digital format?
Well, No, there wasn't. So we were our own audience basically because of our original idea was that we would have 2 live events, but we couldn't do this because we actually implemented the event during lockdown. So we had to conform to quite stringent basically restrictions. So there wasn't a live audience, but another connection that we made actually, which we hadn't thought about this, but it ended up being a connection, was between the technical teams of both sides. So the people that were organizing the technical solutions on both sides did their own kind of intercultural exchange and learning, and are also now still in contact with each other. So this was also interesting thing that the streamers in Ukraine or sound engineers in Ukraine are now in contact with their peers in Berlin and still also exchanging and collaborating.
So for me to understand, the acts were not shown on a streaming, or someone else could access the website whenever they wanted?
So we didn't do live streaming. We chose not to for a number of reasons. Firstly, we had it took some time to set up each new act. So we'd only been able to stream for 15 minutes, then it would have been a 45-minute break. And also we weren't so interested in doing live streaming because unless you market it really well, then maybe you only have half a dozen people watching and it can be quite disparaging. So we decided to focus, like we did, art for the artists. So we were performing, the artist, let's say in Berlin was performing to the 15, 20 people there, plus the 15, 20 people in Ottawa. And we decided to do it this way and then really focus on the post-production. And then, of course, after we'd finished the post-production, then we did a media release week where we really pushed the results to try and reach as large an audience as possible.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, if it's possible. Yeah, I was wondering, why did you decide Ukraine and Georgia?
Why Ukraine and Georgia? Well, we've got really good partners in Ukraine that we've been working with for a number of years. And also the foundation funds collaboration with Eastern Partnership countries. And our main experience was collaboration with Ukraine. And I've also know some artists in Ukraine as well. So I was able to talk with them before the project and also do a needs analysis with them. So it was kind of made sense to do with Ukraine. And we would have done a follow-up project with Ukraine, but this year we couldn't do analog project. You could only do another hybrid one. And we decided this doesn't make sense with Ukraine. Let's wait until we can do an offline project and use the opportunity to establish connections with a new country and a new organization. And yeah, Georgia is just a country that we're quite interested in, and also we found a partner there that is perfect for the project, a propaganda network. They're really experienced in organizing art residencies. So kind of basically because of the partners that we have. And for such a project, you need a reliable partner, a partner that you know that can perform and that you know that can also get not only the right participants, but also the right technical crew, the right space, etc.
Thanks, Peter. I mean, what I took from your presentation, I took a lot of things. I mean, obviously it was a huge learning exercise for you and your team, and not just technologically, but also on all sorts of levels. As you said, we would never done it before, probably in this way, and if this didn't happen. What also interesting for me was when you said that you were surprised how people in other sectors were actually curious about what you're doing, but actually didn't know that these things actually exist, which might a little bit link to maybe what Federica Dragan said before about ecosystem. Maybe ecosystem is larger than we think, potentially. What do you think about it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I can also talk about my personal experience. So I have a background in the university. I used to be an academic and researcher, and I wasn't actually aware of this youth work sector until I was already too old to participate in the opportunities myself. So I'm one example of this, and now I'm involved in the sector. That's now where I'm pursuing my career. But yeah, I think, yeah, and if you want to call it the ecosystem, then there is a lot of potential out there, and not just from in terms of these stakeholders like event spaces and technical stakeholders, but also in other projects. We are working, for example, with the German Alpine Club, these kind of external stakeholders, even restaurants at the local level for our solidarity projects. And they're really excited about what we're doing, and they think this is fantastic, and they want to support and they want to get involved. So yeah, there's a big potential out there.
I have one last question for you, is because there was you said in the beginning, we didn't want to do the online project only. That was clear, huh? There was a clear statement. And today in the webinar, there was this question about how to create magic. And I was wondering, did you manage to create magic in your hybrid approach?
I mean, I think there were definitely some magical moments, you could say. Some moments where I was sitting there in Berlin, but really had this feeling of being in two places at one time, being connected with Ukraine, and also, yeah, I mean, I think also because I say we didn't know what was actually going to happen. And even when the second clip I showed you where Vartan, we also had this discussion about whether he would go into the VR system or not. And he was thinking, no, we won't do it because maybe it won't work technically. And then we kind of persuaded him to do it, but we weren't actually sure he was going to do this. And then what was going to happen? And this was definitely magical when he went in. It was kind of a wow moment when we see this happening live. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for presenting in the first webinar and breaking the ice of the contributors. So to say, we will have more contributions coming in the next webinars, but then the majority of contributions will be in the event. So you will also have more time there to present more of your work and the processes behind. Having said that, and looking at the time, Anita, it's your floor back.
Yes, we're almost closing our session today. With this very inspiring sharing from Peter. I'm very curious now to search the website and look at the rest of the videos. I think many of us probably are. Just to looking back a little bit of what happened today here. We started for a few of us focusing on our bodies, and then at 10 o'clock we went in looking at well, the situation of this event and the reason why it got postponed and partially substituted with this online web series that will keep happening until June next year. And you were discussing with each other about how are you doing? How are you dealing with the rapid change that kind of was accelerated even more with the COVID crisis? And we shared here a little bit about that, about our mindset, our limitations, acknowledging our limitations and the way we were maybe not prepared, some of us, to tackle these new realities, to tackle our own emotions and our own ways of approaching change. Change is never an easy process. And then we went into looking at the research and what research said about innovation and how we see innovation in the youth field. Looking a little bit about having this common vision of what innovation is, maybe starting to have a vocabulary around it so that we can have more dialogues around this topic and bring innovation to the table more often with each other, but also with our leadership, with our organizations, within the ecosystem that we want to create for youth work. And finally, we had an example of a project from Peter showing us kind of how in practice this happened and how it influenced real young people, their creativity, their capacity to innovate. And I was so struck from that this project is an innovative project about young people innovating and being creative themselves, many times introducing us to these new technologies and new ways of doing. So this was a bit the webinar of today. The next webinars will focus on different aspects of the innovation process that we so well tackled here, and to different questions about the system, how it works, and how can we change it, improve it, how can we be at the forefront of change, leading more positive change, and helping young people also to have that voice and to have their platforms to make the change they want to see. The next webinar specifically will be on 16th of December. It's already on the chat there. It will start at the same time as today. And the application or the call is not out yet, but it will be out in 2 weeks or so. And you will receive also an email reminding you to apply if you want and to share to your colleagues. Very important if you are in an organization that is maybe not so much innovation savvy, like some of you were sharing. So maybe send your leadership here as well, and let's start spreading the word. On that webinar, we're also going to have Peter Mary talking about trends. What are the trends in young people, larger trends in society, and which trends are actually influencing the behavior of young people and youth work by consequence. So this is about the next webinars. I hope we see you here as well. There's going to be also a follow-up by post to all of you. So if you want to receive this post, share with us your address. Some of you already did during registration, but if you didn't, or if meanwhile you moved, please write to Sonia and give your address so that we can send you the result of this webinar, hopefully in a nice graphic way. So I'll leave it a bit like that so it's not, I don't ruin the whole surprise. And finally, for Youth Pass, if you want or need kind of a certification that you were here, know that at the end of the web series, we will deliver a Youth Pass to all participants, indicating the sessions you attended. So it will be taken care of later on in the process. If meanwhile you have other questions or other needs, please write to Sonia as well. So in terms of information, this is it. Before we go away, we want to ask you just to fill in a small evaluation form and let us know what we did well and what can we do better. We're also piloting these sessions, so help us construct a better webinars, better experiences for you. It's also on the chat, the link for this. It's very small, so it will take only a few minutes.
Maybe one more thing, Anita, just with interesting moment, simply, when you ask for an address, people immediately send email. We ask you really for a physical postal address this time.
Yes, thank you for meaning that. Yes, it's true. So really where the physical, not the digital address, we kind of forget. Before it was hard to know that we have a digital address, and now it's hard to remember we have a physical one. So yes, I don't know if the team wants to share any other information before we go. No? So maybe I just then invite everyone to turn on their mics and we can say at the same time, goodbye, see you later, have a nice day, whatever you want to wish each other in your own language. Is that okay?
Ciao.
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 Obrigada.
Budite dobro.
It's always nice to hear people's voices and then different languages.
Hvala, vidimo se 16th of December.
Yes.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye. See you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you. See you. Bye.